CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to The World Today, live from CGTN in London. I'm Jamie Owen. Our top stories. Another night of violence in Jerusalem sees dozens of people injured in fresh clashes between Palestinians and Israeli police. Our other headlines: China says most of its space rocket debris landed in the Indian Ocean or disintegrated as it re-entered Earth's atmosphere. Boris Johnson refuses calls for a referendum on Scottish independence and says the UK's recovery after COVID should now be the priority. And why China's mystery box craze is causing outrage. Fresh clashes have broken out between Palestinians and Israeli police outside Jerusalem, with scores of people injured. Tensions escalated hours before Israel's Supreme Court cancelled a ruling on whether authorities can evict dozens of Palestinians from the Sheikh Jarrah neighbourhood and give their homes to Jewish settlers. Let's talk to our correspondent Stephanie Freed. Stephanie, what's the latest you have for us?
Well, Jamie, right now things are relatively quiet. This has been a flashpoint area. The area I'm in now, this is one of the main entrances to the Muslim quarter of Jerusalem's Old City. It's also a main entrance to Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is Islam's third holiest site. This has been the site of clashes between border police and Palestinians night after night after night throughout really the holy month of Ramadan, on and off. And as you mentioned, another issue about a kilometer away from here. At the same time, there's been an ongoing issue of a pending eviction of Palestinians from their homes to be replaced by Jewish settlers. Certainly that has raised eyebrows throughout the world, has garnered criticism and words of caution from world leaders, world bodies. The Supreme Court, as you noted, has now decided to delay a decision that was to be taken on Monday about that eviction, delay it by a month. So that is somewhat letting the steam, the pressure off of the pressure cooker situation that has been here in Jerusalem now for the past month. However, on Sunday, Sunday evening, starting this evening, running into Monday, starts what is called Jerusalem Day. Jerusalem Day marks the day historically in 1967 when Israel took control of all of Jerusalem. Jews converge on the city, tens of thousands of Jews waving flags, singing, dancing, and marching right through this entrance through the Muslim quarter, which is provocative. For Jews, it's a happy day. Certainly for Palestinians who are living under Israeli occupation, there's a different sentiment. And as if the tensions aren't high as they have been for the past month, Israel's prime minister on Sunday at the weekly cabinet meeting said, or he asserted, that Israel belongs to the Jews, Israel belongs to the Israelis or the Israeli Jews. That's the way it's been for thousands of years historically. That's not going to change, and that Israel has a right to continue building, and the implication there is building settlements. Jamie?
Stephanie Freed in Jerusalem, thank you very much. The death toll from an explosion in the Afghan capital, Kabul, has risen to 58. At least 150 people have now been injured. As families bury their dead, they're blaming the government and Western powers for failing to end the war. The Taliban has denied involvement in the attack. The violence comes a week after US and NATO troops begin withdrawal from Afghanistan ahead of a September deadline. Debris from China's Long March 5B rocket, which carried the main module into orbit on the 29th of April, could be seen over the Middle East as it headed towards Earth. China's space agency says it re-entered the atmosphere just before 10:30 on Sunday morning Beijing time, with the vast majority of it burning up. The rest of the debris fell into the Indian Ocean just west of the Maldives. After US speculation that it posed a risk, there have been no reports of injuries or damage. Russia has shown off its military might at the traditional Victory Day parade marking the end of the Second World War. The display featured over 12,000 troops and 190 pieces of military hardware. President Putin used the occasion to promise Russia will defend its national interests. He also denounced anti-Russian sentiment amid tensions with the West. The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says there will not be a second Scottish referendum on independence. This after the Scottish National Party won a historic fourth consecutive victory in parliamentary elections. Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, says it proves another referendum is the will of the country. But Boris Johnson says talk of ripping the UK apart is both irresponsible and reckless. Well, let's talk now to our correspondent, Naweed Jabarkil. So Boris Johnson saying no to a second independence referendum despite the SNP's clear victory.
Yeah, fascinating time in British politics, this. What this result did for the Scottish National Party was give them a clear victory in the Scottish parliamentary elections, 64 seats, but that's one shy of an outright majority, so it means they need to rely on the support of other allies to try and push ahead with a second independence referendum. Those allies appear to be the Green Party, who also ran across the country promising a second independence referendum. Together they would have enough seats, but already we've seen Westminster come out, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government saying that this isn't something that they're going to agree to, so that signals that there could be trouble ahead. And what this means is that if they don't sort it out between themselves, there is the option of the legal route, which would be pretty messy. It's most likely going to be lengthy, and what it means is that the UK is going to have to start worrying and dealing with another independence referendum.
With the results in, the battle lines have been drawn in a political showdown that could signal the breakup of the United Kingdom. The Scottish National Party, led by Nicola Sturgeon, have won a fourth straight term as the biggest party in Scotland's Parliament. While falling one seat short of an outright majority, she said the move was a clear sign people wanted independence.
The statistics of this election campaign in many respects are record-breaking for the SNP. So the question for the UK government is a simple one, and it should not be a controversial one. Do they accept democracy or don't they? And I hope that, however they might couch that at this stage, they will accept democracy.
The result has tarnished an otherwise strong weekend for Boris Johnson's Conservatives. Across England, they tore through Labour Party strongholds and increased their power in local councils. The man overseeing the UK's union travelled to Scotland with a message of unity, saying the COVID-19 pandemic ought to be the focus.
It's just a massive distraction. And as I say, I cannot believe that people who are worried about their jobs, worried about the extension of furlough, worried about what's happening to their children's education, I cannot believe that they think that the answer to all of these things is a protracted debate on the Constitution.
As things stand, the SNP and its potential allies have two main routes if they're to push ahead with a second referendum. They'll need the UK government to approve it in Westminster, something Boris Johnson has categorically ruled out. Or they can take the legal route in a case that's likely to be prolonged and could end up in the Supreme Court. Both sides say they want to avoid the scenario of a lengthy court battle, but with little sign of either of them backing down, this could become another divisive political saga for a country that's still reeling from the fallout over Brexit.
Meanwhile, as we speak, the knives are out in the UK's opposition party, Labour, which suffered huge defeats, as you were reporting, in the elections.
Yeah, and this is going to be a big worry for Keir Starmer. What we're expecting is, at the very least, a cabinet reshuffle, so his shadow cabinet moving people around and trying to bring fresh faces in. When a shadow opposition leader is in trouble, a cabinet reshuffle is usually, or even for a serving Prime Minister, a cabinet reshuffle is usually a way to try and spruce things up. But the problem he faces, essentially, is that he came in promising to make the Labour Party more electable. He wore a suit, he was a London lawyer, and said that he was able to win an election based on the way that Labour's performed in the past few days. And in this election, that looks like a very long shot now. Not just that, on Saturday he decided to get rid of his deputy, Angela Rayner, a woman who's very popular with the left of the party. And what you essentially have now is Keir Starmer, who looks like he's caught in the middle of those in the left of the party, loyal to the previous leader, Jeremy Corbyn, saying the party needs to go more to the left. That's why it lost. And then you've got those in the centre loyal to the former Prime Minister Tony Blair, who say we need to go back to that era in order to become a party of national government again. And Keir Starmer, at the moment, I think the fundamental problem he faces, and as has been shown in this election, is a lack of policy, really. Throughout the COVID-19 crisis, the government was arguably at its weakest point that it has been since the Conservatives came into power in 2010, and there wasn't really much aside from saying we agree with the Conservatives. And that's something that you saw even here in London, for example, getting a letter through my own house from the Mayor Sadiq Khan, who won the London election, but the top line of that letter said that a vote for Sadiq Khan would mean the Tories don't get into power. And I don't think that's washing with the electorate now, and so something needs to change. It may start with this cabinet reshuffle, but with the next general election in 2024, Boris Johnson, buoyed by what's happened in recent days, Keir Starmer's going to have to come up with something pretty quick.
A very quick final thought. All the networks obviously have been obsessing about the Conservative Party, the Labour Party and the SNP. But the Green Party and Green policies have perhaps been rather unreported and rather successful in this election.
Yeah, and they look like they could be the kingmakers up in Scotland at the moment, which is incredibly important, particularly for the future of the Union, of the United Kingdom. Aside from that, they have done well, picked up some council seats here in England in local council elections, as of the Lib Dems. They've resurfaced as a political party once again after suffering pretty bad defeats in previous local elections and general elections. But just in terms of the Greens, I think we're seeing a general trend where voters are becoming more environmentally friendly, and that's not just because of their own personal preferences, but also what the government's doing. The UK hosting the COP26 climate conference this year, US President Joe Biden making it his #1 foreign policy and domestic policy. So this is a global trend that we're seeing, and that's being represented here in the UK's local elections.
Luigi Barkle, thank you very much. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead here on The World Today. India's battle against coronavirus as COVID creeps into Delhi's overcrowded slums. And is this the most expensive wine in the world? The bottle for auction with a truly stratospheric price tag.
More than 100,000 people in Italy have now died from COVID-19.
The vaccination programme offers some hope for the future, but intensive care units are near capacity.
The Spanish government is hoping to vaccinate over 1 million people by next month.
Living in Germany are struggling with their mental health.
Hungary is supplementing the EU's vaccine rollout, buying doses from Russia and China to speed up the process.
4 million people have tested positive in France.
After a grim winter, the promise of a spring bloom that could mean freedom for millions.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. Another night of violence in Jerusalem sees dozens of people injured in fresh clashes between Palestinians and Israeli police. China says most of its space rocket debris landed in the Indian Ocean or disintegrated as it re-entered Earth's atmosphere. And Boris Johnson refuses calls for a referendum on Scottish independence and says the UK's recovery after COVID should now be the priority. European Union leaders are holding talks for a second day in Portugal. Their summit aims to repair some of the damage the pandemic has caused, turning around job losses, poverty and inequality. Meanwhile, in Strasbourg, the French president has opened up the Future of Europe project. He called for the EU to make larger and faster investments in science. CGTN's correspondent Rahul Pathak is live for us. Rahul, is this a genuine attempt at EU reform or just more talk?
Jamie, I think you could make a very good case for both arguments right now. I mean, the issue of EU reform is not new. They've been discussing that, or they've been having arguments about that in Brussels since the days of Margaret Thatcher, Helmut Kohl and François Mitterrand in the 1980s. So, issue of EU governance is not a new thing, but it has been brought into even sharper focus in recent years, thanks to Brexit and also the European Union's response to the coronavirus pandemic and its difficult rollout programme for its vaccination programme. Now, the driving force behind this scheme is the French President, Emmanuel Macron.
We must also find efficiency and ambition again, to be able to decide more quickly and, above all, decide more strongly when faced with crisis and adversity. I see the numbers of our research and investment programs on industries for the future. When I compare those to the Chinese or the Americans, we are not yet up to the task of this ambition.
So Emmanuel Macron speaking about the initiative, and frankly, its success will depend on whether or not people feel people want to actually take up the opportunity and make their voices heard, as he wants them to do. Now, it's a scheme that he trialled in France, a moderate success. He'll be hoping for more success on a continent-wide level, especially ahead of French presidential elections next year, where he's looking for a second term. But at the moment, just 7,000 people have taken up the opportunity of taking part in this online digital platform to make their voices heard. 7,000 people out of 450 million EU citizens. I'm not very good at mathematics, Jamie, but I don't think that's a very large percentage.
Rahul Pathak in Madrid. Thank you very much. Demonstrations are being held in Paris and other French cities calling for the government to force through a more ambitious green agenda. This comes after the lower house of parliament voted through a climate bill which activists say has been weakened by President Macron. The bill will ban short-haul flights and encourage the purchase of greener cars. It will be debated in the Senate. Spaniards have taken to the streets of Madrid to celebrate the end of the country's curfew last night, which was lifted in all but 4 of the country's 17 regions. People will also be allowed to travel between regions for the first time in months. Spain's state of emergency to fight the pandemic had been in place since October. Some restrictions will remain, with bars and restaurants closing at midnight. India is recruiting hundreds of former army medics to support the overwhelmed healthcare system, struggling as COVID infections hit new records. Deaths rose by more than 4,000 for a second consecutive day, and there were more than 400,000 new cases in the last 24 hours. Delhi has extended its curfew until the 17th of May, and as our correspondent Abdullah Hashmi now reports, the situation is having a devastating impact on people who live in the city's slums.
Known as the rich man's disease and a poor man's burden, COVID-19 has choked India's capital in its second wave. While the capital's urban population struggles to find oxygen, ventilators and medicines to survive, Delhi's slum dwellers face the additional burden of having lost jobs and access to food and ration for their daily sustenance. Most men in Delhi's slums are daily wage laborers working at construction sites or factories that have been shut down due to the pandemic. The women, usually employed as house help by the neighboring urban households, have also been laid off to prevent the spread of the deadly virus.
We used to work as domestic help in big houses, but the owners have asked us not to come to their houses anymore because of Corona. They're doing all their house chores on their own now. They haven't provided us any financial support in lieu of our job loss.
Last week, the Delhi government had claimed it had provided a compensation of Rs 5,000 to each construction worker as temporary relief. This week, it announced free ration for all ration card holders. but the last mile delivery of this ration has always been questionable.
Our children are going hungry. We are struggling to find ration. We don't even have water to drink. We are not able to find stuff we need. All shops are closed.
As the dream of a brighter future in the capital is shattered for these immigrant workers, they look to return to their homes, but even that comes with an unaffordable price tag.
Even if we want to go back home, we can't, because train tickets are either not available or cost 2,000 rupees in the black market. The government seems to support the rich but kill the poor. In some cruel way, it seems a way to control India's burgeoning population.
As the Delhi government has been cornered by the pandemic from all sides, perhaps it could take a tip or two in COVID-19 management from Asia's biggest slum, Dharavi, which last year not only flattened the curve, but also this year has managed to fight the second wave of COVID-19 with much more efficacy. Abdullah Hashmi, CGTN, Delhi.
The blind box market is becoming an increasingly popular consumer trend in China. The concept is simple. A shopper orders a mystery box for themselves or perhaps as a gift. But the discovery that some companies are selling pets in this manner has caused widespread concern. Jiang Xiaoyi reports.
These squealing packages were found in the city of Chengdu on Monday evening. More than 150 boxes, each containing a living puppy or kitten.
They were transferring these pets to this vehicle. You can see the van's cargo area is fully sealed. All these cats and dogs could have suffocated.
Animal welfare activists reported to the police immediately and did all they could to help save the animals. About 40 pets were hospitalized and the rest were put under care. Postal Service authorities have launched an official investigation. The news sparked public anger on social media. Many called for everyone involved to be punished, including the ZTO Express delivery company. The company has issued an official statement admitting to violation of postal regulations, saying it has suspended the personnel involved in the practice. It also says it will cooperate with the investigation. ZTO has also confirmed that live animals were sold through e-commerce platforms. The pet blind boxes usually contain dogs and cats and even turtles with varying prices. It is illegal in China to deliver live animals through express mail, but the courier company has also violated the revised Animal Epidemic Prevention Law, which went into effect at the beginning of this month. Jiang Xiaoyi, CGTN.
Archaeologists in Italy have discovered the remains of 9 Neanderthals at a prehistoric site near Rome. The remains are thought to be between 50 and 100,000 years old. Neanderthals, the closest ancient relatives of humans, died out about 40,000 years ago. It's not known what killed them off, but theories include the impact of climate change and competition from modern humans. Now, if you think you pay too much for a bottle of wine, this is going to make you choke. A bottle of fine French wine, which has been to the International Space Station, is up for auction with a price tag that is astronomical. The bottle of Petrus was sent into orbit and is being sold by Christie's. I spoke to the auction house's International Director of Wine and Spirits, Tim Chiptree, and asked him why.
Well, this is a fascinating area of scientific research into the maturation of wine in space. 12 bottles of Petrus 2000 were sent up to the International Space Station and spent 14 months there. Then they were brought back to Earth and they were compared against terrestrial versions that had stayed here on Earth. Obviously, the conditions up in space are different from here on Earth. Radiation levels, temperature, humidity, and of course, zero gravity. So these differences were then assessed by tasters. And I'm thankful to report that both versions were absolutely delicious and outstanding, as Petrus 2000 should be. However, there were some slight differences in the maturation. So the space Petrus was actually more evolved. So it had developed more sort of garnet color rather than ruby red, and also had developed more evolved tertiary characteristics, such as licorice and cedar. So it appears that maturing in space does sort of increase the evolution process. The lucky buyer of this unique lot will actually get not only the space Petrus, but a terrestrial Petrus. So they will be able to compare for themselves the different nuances between these two differently matured wines.
Tim, I don't want to cheapen the conversation, but how much? What are we talking about here?
Well, the estimate is in the region of $1 million US. But this is, a unique piece. Wines that have been into space. It's and also, not only are they getting those 2 bottles of Petrus, but they're also getting a trunk, a beautifully crafted trunk that has taken artisans in Paris 900 hours to create. And it has a secret vault that has a solar and galactic-inspired opening mechanism that you turn, and it opens to reveal the bottles and the glasses and a corkscrew made of a meteorite. Incredible piece.
Now, there is a more serious side to this experiment, isn't there, which hopes to benefit food and agricultural research back on Earth. How so?
Well, absolutely. So the funds raised from the sale of this unique lot will go into funding more scientific research into agricultural practices. So the company Space Cargo Unlimited, which has done this experiment with the Petrus 2000, they will be conducting future research into agricultural practices in space. So it's going to a very worthwhile cause.
Is there much of a buzz around this in the wine world? I mean, who's going to be mad enough to pay $1 million for 1 bottle of wine? I mean, it's crazy.
Well, you might say it's crazy, but we have seen some amazing interest across the globe, not only from wine connoisseurs, but also from collectors in general. This is a unique piece of not only Venice, but also space history.
The headlines again. At least 90 people have been injured in another night of violence in Jerusalem between Palestinians and Israeli police as tensions mount over Palestinian evictions from disputed land. China says most of its space rocket debris landed in the Indian Ocean or disintegrated as it re-entered Earth's atmosphere. Debris from China's Long March 5B rocket, which carried the main module into orbit, could be seen over the Middle East as it headed towards Earth. And Boris Johnson refuses call for a second referendum on Scottish independence and says the UK's recovery after COVID should now be the priority. This after the Scottish National Party won a historic 4th consecutive victory in parliamentary elections. Now, have you ever wondered why you stop losing weight when you exercise? Next up on CGTN, we'll tell you why and what you can do about it. And we'll be discovering how to make the night sky dark again. We'll report into the collaboration to lower light pollution to return the sight of the stars to city residents. That's Razor, right after The World Today, here on CGTN. And that is it for The World Today. Thank you for watching. We're on smart TV apps, Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, on YouTube and Dailymotion, as well as CGTN.com and on the CGTN app. From me, goodbye.